Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be talking about the latest release from Alex North, The Man Made of Smoke. This came out last year. I got my copy from The Strand, so this was clearly a Book of the Month Club version of it. I am not part of Book of the Month Club, but I did buy a used version from The Strand. And I'm very interested in talking about this and hearing your opinions on this book. So I discovered Alex North, I believe back in like 2020, 2021 when The Whisper Man came out. I remember devouring that novel and really enjoying it. Alex North writes kind of like crime thrillers, and I am a huge fan of crime thrillers. And I remember like absolutely loving that book. I cannot remember a thing about that book now. It really did not have that much of a lasting power on me, which is unfortunate. But I knew that I wanted to read more from Alex North and kind of hoped that I would pick something up that would maybe stick with me a little bit more. And this book definitely lingers. This book I finished a couple days ago, and I have been thinking about it ever since. It's actually kind of filled me with a sense of dread, and I haven't wanted to pick up a horror novel in a couple days since I finished this, because it was really bleak and really dark, and I wasn't expecting that. So I'm going to read the inside flap real quick for y'all. So it says, Dave Garvey's life has been haunted by the crime he witnessed as a child, narrowly escaping an encounter with a notorious serial killer. He has dedicated his life since to profiling criminals, eager to seek justice for innocent victims. So when his father dies under suspicious circumstances, Dan revisits the small island community where he grew up, determined to uncover the truth about his death. Is it possible that the monster he remembers from his childhood nightmares has returned after all these years? With his signature shock and suspense, Alex North brings us The Man Made of Smoke. By turns emotional, introspective, and utterly terrifying, this is a story of fathers and sons, shadows and secrets, and the fight we all face to escape the trauma of the past. This is an interesting book. This is sort of about a copycat killer, and it's also about survivor's guilt. And it's also about a child not understanding a situation, many children not understanding situations, and maybe making the wrong choices and having to deal with those consequences. And that's a theme that you see throughout this entire novel, these moments of children losing their innocence and the choices that they make in those moments haunting them for the rest of their lives. And it's very well done. It's very well done. We have a lot of commentary on father-son relationships, which seems to have been a trend that I have been reading lately. Not by choice, but I've seen it in a lot of books that I've read recently, and I think this one is done very well. You literally see it again in Sleep Tight by J.H. Markert and The Unseen by Anya Alborn, which are the last two novels that I read as well. So we're definitely kind of on this like family dynamic and the commentary on how being a parent affects your child, especially when they look back in adulthood at their childhood relationships and trying to understand who their parents were. Same with Schrader's Court. That was a huge theme in Schrader's Court. So I'm really kind of jazzed on these themes. I think it's really a nice way to humanize characters, and it's a really good way to create dynamic individuals who might not be the most likable of characters, but to give the reader something to root for or learn about or want to dig deeper on. And I'm not saying that our main characters of like Dan and Sarah aren't likable characters. They actually kind of are, but there's nothing about them that's really intriguing. They're just very much small town best friends who grew apart, came back together, and are trying to solve a mystery. Cut and dry, that's kind of it. Sarah definitely has a little bit more going for her and a lot more of a personality than Dan in this, but at the end of the day, they kind of feel very cookie-cutter generic characters. But when you put them into the relationships that Alex North is trying to make commentaries on, all of a sudden you do actually feel compelled to read more about them. And while I enjoyed this kind of dynamic duo of Dan using what he knows about serial killers from his professional life as well as from what inspired him to go into psychiatry from when he was a child, and just basically pairing up with Sarah, this kind of go-getter woman, I would say, to solve this copycat killing spree. What makes this story interesting is actually every other perspective that we get. So we get perspectives from Dan's father, who is whose death is the catalyst of this entire story and Dan's involvement. And then we get perspectives of one of the victims of the original serial killer, who we now have our, like, copycat's not the right word, but I'm just going to call it a copycat killer because I don't really want to spoil anything. And it was those two chapters that I found really, really interesting because they are the chapters that kind of actually unravel the mystery. And the way the novel is structured is you get a chapter from one of their perspectives, which lets the reader know what's happening. And then you get to read a chapter from Dan's perspective where you see how he figures that clue out, how he figures out what's going on. And I really, really enjoyed that. I thought it was a really good way to tell a story that was suspenseful and interesting, but keep you really closely tied to the characters, especially when we are focusing so heavily on these father-son relationships between our Garvey boys. And I really, really liked that structure. However, the chapters with James and Barnaby were so hard to read. James is a child. I think he's like 11 or 12 years old. And you get many chapters from James' perspective, and they are horrifying, gut-wrenching, and really, 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 really upsetting. And his storyline does not have a happy ending in any way, shape, or form. Though Alex North tries to kind of sugarcoat it, which I commend him on doing. It's definitely not something that was easy to read. And that really weighed heavy in my heart reading these books. And I think that's what I liked about this, is this is a really, like, difficult novel to digest with a pretty simple premise. And Alex North was able to use the relationships and humanity of our main characters to really make these people feel like, these fictional characters feel like real people. And I think that's what did it for me, because I put this book down and I literally was like, I need to read something super, super happy after this, because I was not expecting the weight of this story. I was not expecting to be so absolutely, like, devastated solely by a child's relationship with a stuffed animal. And so definitely be warned on that. A lot of not so great things happen to a lot of young characters in this book, a lot of young boys, and it's really hard to process. But this was a 4-star read. This was a 4-star read, and I almost debated giving it a 5-star read, but it's really hard for me to give 5-star reads to books that deeply disturb me, solely because when I give a 5-star read, it's something that I'm, like, enjoying reading. And while I did enjoy this book, and I do like this book, and I do think it is better than The Whisper Man, and the emotional ties that you get with your characters are much stronger and more fleshed out, I can't say I was happy the whole time reading it. It really does get very, very, very dark. And you know what? I thought it was really interesting because there's a moment where you seem to have everything kind of figured out, and it's a really interesting perspective to be reading a story from this angle of knowing what the twist is going to be. And you kind of get that feeling really early on, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. So we're kind of just reading things parallel to one another to get to the same conclusion because we've already been notified of what the twist is. And then in just classic, like, Riley Sager fashion, another twist comes out of nowhere. And really, really blindsided me. And I had a blast with that, and I'm really happy that that was the direction that Alex North chose to take this novel in. Even though if he had continued without the, like, big twist at the end, I still think I would have been fine with this book. I just think I would have been a little bit more devastated at the end, which is funny. It's very rare, I think, that, like, a twist comes out of nowhere and all of a sudden you feel like you can breathe again. So that was interesting. And I haven't really had that happen to me with other books. I'm definitely struggling to talk about this novel solely because I don't want to ruin it. And I don't want to give spoilers in here because the spoilers and, like, the twist of everything don't really do much to elevate my review of this book because, again, this is a very cut and dry thriller. Like, it's very simplistic. It's very straightforward. It's a good journey to be on, and I like the winding road that you go down to figure everything out. But what makes this book actually phenomenal is the character development and the richness of our leads and how attached you feel to James and to Detective Garvey and to his son Dan. And you have a character like Sarah who you originally think is going to kind of be this like battered woman who's like down on her luck, and like she kind of is, but she doesn't fall into any cliches of that stereotype. And I just thought it was great to just feel like I was reading about real, tangible people. I really love that our main character, even though knowing his dad is dead from the very beginning, still uses like conversation techniques that he probably uses in therapy to try and figure out what his dad learned and how to understand, how to follow in his father's footsteps. I thought that was really, really good. And there's a couple minor plot holes here and there, but like nothing that was too like on the nose where I just like couldn't get past it, or I was just like, seriously, we couldn't have thought of anything better. Just like super, super minor things. Like there's one scene where Dan figures out what his dad's password is, and I was just like, we needed more backstory on that, because I just found that really quite unbelievable of him to have solved. But I wasn't sure if it was trying to show like the detective roots that Dan has because his father is a detective, or just trying to show like he did actually know his dad far better than originally let on, or what he originally wanted the reader to believe. And I really loved this book. It probably should be a 5-star read because it is still sitting with me. It is still lingering. I have put off doing this review for a while because just like talking about some of the subject matter really upset me. And like, I don't ever think I'm going to be able to look at like gas station restrooms the same ever again. I just like the entire scene in the gas station restroom just like breaks my heart, and you get it told over so many different times from so many different perspectives, and it's just so tragic and sad and realistic. And that's definitely what I like about this book, is this is one of the most realistic crime thrillers that I have read. I'm trying to think the last one that really lingered with me was maybe In the Woods by Tana French. Even though, like, and that book has a lot of, like, human flaws in there, that, and like the idea of never always getting the answers, like the mystery isn't always wrapped up nice and neat with like a pretty bow at the end. And I thought this book really just, it felt so realistic by the choices that were made and the way that things come about, and again those relationships between long lost friends and father and son and people you've never even met before in your life and had one interaction with, which changed the course of everything for both individuals. Like, it was just so well done, and I am so thrilled with this, and I definitely want to read more from Alex North. I know he has a couple other books that have come out since, and I do think he might have, this might have been his book that came out this year. Yeah, this was his 2025 release. But he has 2 other books that I haven't read, The Angel Maker and The Shadows. And now he's definitely jumping on my, I have to pick up his work, because I was just really, really, really greatly impressed with this. But check the trigger warnings, because this is dark, this is bleak, this is not something to read if you're already in like a sad mood, because it will just bring you down. And I think that's the beauty of this novel, is it just feels like something that really would happen in real life, and I thought that was fantastic. So there you go. Really, really, really happy with that book. But I really wish that I had read it in like 3 or 4 days, which is kind of like the pace that I had been doing for some of my other novels recently. And it was just so heavy and so tragic that I had to like really take it slow, and then I needed to like debrief afterwards. Definitely reading a fashion novel right now, because just the thought of picking up another bleak horror story just like breaks my soul. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. As always, I'm trying to post 2 to 3 times every single week. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below. And I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah!